So today I have with me Mr. Rangaswami, who's the founder of Indiaspora, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the report talks about in terms of the impact of the Indian diaspora in the United States. So my first question to you, sir, is that you mentioned in the report that the Indian diaspora constitutes 1.5% of the total US population, and now we know that the US elections are merely months away. So what is the significance of the Indian diaspora vote in this election, and what do you think are some of the key issues for the diaspora?
Yeah, so the Indian diaspora has become more politically active over the past decade. So we have 5 people in Congress, we have a vice president, we had candidates on both sides run for office this time around. It's really matured as a community. So there's a lot of interest in the elections. And our community is about 65% Democratic and about 20-25% Republican, with the rest being independent. So it's skewed to the Democratic side as a community. So there's a lot of interest on both sides, vigorous debates and stuff. But when Kamala Harris became the nominee on the Democratic side, there was a burst of energy in the community as well. To see someone of Indian descent actually the candidate for president. So it's reached new heights. But again, in the US, elections are very different than India. So there are a few states that will ultimately determine who becomes president, and these are called the battleground states. So in those states, I think the Indian community can make a difference. Because if you look at the last elections in these 4 or 5 states like Michigan and Georgia and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, the candidates won by very, very small margins. In all those states, there's significant Indian populations. So if they come out and vote for either side, it can make a big difference.
Right, and in terms of some of the key issues for the diaspora, whether it comes to visas and because we saw under former President Trump, immigration became a key issue and there were visa restrictions. So, what do you think are some of the issues that is driving the diaspora to vote this time around?
So I think the big issues for the diaspora, one is US-India relations. The entire diaspora on a bipartisan basis wants to see a very strong relationship between India and US. The Indian diaspora, again, as we saw in the report, 78% of us have at least a bachelor's degree. So what is the government, what is the president and the new administration going to do for education is important. The other one, obviously, is immigration. There's a whole pipeline of legal immigrants going from a H-1B or student visa. As we saw, the Indian students are the biggest population in the US. You see H-1B, Indians are the biggest population. They all have to move then to a green card status and ultimately to a citizen. So that process needs to be streamlined, and the diaspora is very, very focused to see how both candidates are going to handle that process to speed it up, make it more efficient, give Indians a chance to become citizens. And so those are the top 3 issues in the community.
Right, and my last question to you is both Foreign Minister Jaishankar as well as the US Ambassador mentioned, how significant the US-India relationship has now become, and what do you think are some of the areas where there is more potential for this relationship to grow in the future?
So I think you saw from our report and from both of their comments that they both value this as the relationship of this decade, if not this century. So what can be done? I mean, we had in the report outlined the trade between the 2 countries, the tourism between the 2 countries, the student, going from India to the US, and the remittances from US being 26 billion to India and so forth. So I think easing business, easing the friction in every one of these areas on both sides will absolutely take the relationship forward. So making it easier for students to go to the United States, making easier for Americans to visit India and to do business in India. So it's both sides can improve it. I think there's no limit to this at all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rangaswamy, for speaking to NDTV.